Welcome to another episode of Actors Theater Unscripted. My name is Erica Denise. I am the Director of Learning and Creative Engagement at Actors Theater of Louisville. And I am joined here in this virtual room of such a distinguished panel. And I want us to go around and introduce ourselves and jump right into the topic this week, where we are going to be discussing Juneteenth, why we celebrate. So let's start with ladies first. Miss Pat, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Pat Mathison, and I am an independent consultant here in Louisville, and I most recently am serving as the project manager for Juneteenth Jubilee 2020 docuseries.
Okay, Senator.
Gerald Neal, I'm a senator, state senator representing the 33rd Senatorial District.
Dr. Cosby.
Kevin Cosby, pastor of St. Stephen Baptist Church and president of Simmons College of Kentucky.
Jecorey.
Peace. Jecorey Arthur, musician and professor at Simmons College of Kentucky, as well as the director of the Juneteenth Jubilee video series.
And Kevin Fields. You're on mute.
There we go. Kevin Fields here, President and CEO of Louisville Central Community Centers. Glad to be aboard.
Thank you all so much for being here on our panel today. We are so excited for this conversation. And so I just want to jump right on in. What in the world is Juneteenth? And I'll express my ignorance. I did not learn about Juneteenth until maybe 6 years ago. And so let's just give the people some knowledge really quick. Who wants to jump in and just tell us what Juneteenth is?
Corey.
Well, Juneteenth is, to be frank, the true Independence Day of this country, because 4th of July, 1776, when we gained freedom from England, we still had 500,000 Black people, slaves in chains and bondage. But we didn't learn that coming up in school. I didn't learn that in school. We didn't learn about that throughout my studies at the University of Louisville, where I was learning about music and so many different composers around this same time. We were never taught about Juneteenth. We were never taught about the fact that it took a century over after that date for us to get slavery. So Juneteenth is the last known day of legal slavery in the United States of America. But I'm sure we'll get into deeper conversations about how we have neo-slavery today and we have never truly been set free.
I guess I could add to that, if I may. On June 19th, 1865, that's like nearly 5 months after Congress passed the 13th Amendment. The word of the abolition of slavery reached Galveston, Texas, freeing some of the last remaining enslaved people. So Juneteenth sort of was like the last chapter in that process of individuals recognizing that they had achieved freedom in that sense. So that's one aspect of it anyway.
I would add this, that I think that we have to use, I think, accurate words to describe what in fact happened. Martin Luther King Jr. said that we experienced both freedom and famine at the same time. So I would not call it freedom. I would say that the enslaved were fired and not freed because they were released into famine and not into reparations.
I agree with that.
So why is Juneteenth important, and more importantly, should it be recognized as a national holiday? And I have seen some organizations that are giving paid time off for June 19th, but I don't know that it has become an official holiday yet. Let's speak on that. Should it be a national holiday, and why?
Well, I'll go first. Like you, Erica, I did not learn about Juneteenth until my adult years. And I was a military brat, and I also married into the Army. So it was really a different type of world, but I think that it should definitely be recognized as a holiday not only in the celebratory nature, but also in an educational capacity. While we celebrate it, I think it is even more important that we understand the relevance of Juneteenth, what it is, what it means to Black people, and understand why we celebrate. I think we do a lot of celebrating and we don't fully understand why. So I'm excited about Juneteenth and the educational portion of it. I want to teach my grandsons about Juneteenth, their history, and I want them to understand what it means to be Black in this country.
And Erica, I'll add, I'm not so sure that I would advocate for Juneteenth becoming a national holiday, because I'm not sure what that would mean, and I wouldn't want us to send the wrong signal to the rest of the world that now that we've got a national holiday, that we're satisfied that Juneteenth has received the recognition that it deserves. And I must say, you know, as a child of the civil rights movement, I too did not become aware of this noble idea of Juneteenth until I was an adult. And I learned about it in the context of it just being another day to have a family picnic, much like we did on the 4th of July. So if we're going to create a holiday, what is the end objective? Is it to go and have another day off and another family get together, another family feast? What would be the significance of it? I think there's more at stake when we talk about this issue. You know, so we need to really get to the crux of the matter, I think, in terms of why do we really want to focus on the fact that we're still suffering in the grips of a national economy that still doesn't recognize African Americans for who they need to be recognized as, and that is thriving, successful, entrepreneurial people who built this country. And so we have not gotten our due, and a national holiday just might dilute the emphasis of what we really need to achieve, which is reparations. So I just would be hesitant on being a champion for that reason.
Corey, do you want to speak on that? Because I know just in talking to you that you are an advocate for making Juneteenth a holiday, and you may have opposing views to what Kevin Fields is saying.
I am, but as he said, I also don't want it to become a symbol. We want to make sure that the holiday is what it is, and you know, we might get paid time off, but we need substance that comes along with it, and that truly means education. And I think someone typed into the chat a question about how do we get this into schools. Those conversations are already happening. I was just on a call with JCPS's social studies department not too long ago about creating a Black studies program, and specifically an ADOS studies program, because we try to flatten Blackness quite often. Even with Juneteenth celebrations, we see the red, black, and green colors being utilized and a lot of Afrocentric celebrations happening, which is needed for some of us to have that identity and where we come from culturally. But at the end of the day, we have to understand that we are in America. Our justice claim for reparations is in America. This government has done to us what it has done to no one else. And Dr. Cosby has said it best. We are the only group on this soil that has received special mistreatment. So we need special treatment to repair us. So yes, for the holiday, but what does that mean? And how do we go beyond the holiday of symbolism and go to something that's more substantial?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we have a question from the audience. Should each region, city celebrate the date it received its liberation? My grandma shared that she grew up celebrating August the 8th. And I don't know what the significance of August the 8th is, but if anybody has any insight, would you like to address that question?
Well, I can tell you that August the 8th for me is my wife's birthday. And so I tell you, there's a lot of reasons why. I use that as an example because in terms of regions of the country, in terms of what's of special interest to individuals and groups, we can name a number of reasons for celebrating. And I think that I'm advocating that we look beyond that, you know. And, you know, I'm a proud member of St. Stephen Church and a follower of Dr. Kevin Cosby. And so when we just a year ago this time, were commemorating 400 years of indentured slaves being brought to this nation. But not only commemorating it, but setting the stage for what is happening now, that at this point it was prophesied that once 400 years had passed, that there would be a time for people to rise up. And so I think, Erica, what I'm suggesting, not that I'm against a holiday or any special day of recognition, because, you know, we got Christmas, we got Thanksgiving, we got birthdays, we got Easter, we got enough holidays. We got enough reasons to celebrate. So we need a lot more than that. So that's why I'm not saying that we shouldn't celebrate or shouldn't maybe even decentralize based on regions of the nation and how we commemorate that. But when we do that, what does that mean? What is the end objective there? So if America's going to give us something, it's got to be more than you know, another birthday, another point of celebration.
Yeah.
Well, you know, basically, I really don't have a problem with it being a national holiday, personally. I think symbols do mean something, but I get your point, because I think, just take Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. What I know of him, what I know of his struggle, my engagement with him and others during that struggle, and how he was regarded and characterized at the time, even subject to attack to his very life, etc., and ultimately lost his life in that struggle. But you walk into the General Assembly in the Senate chamber, and Dr. Martin Luther King's day comes over, and we celebrate him. You can't even recognize that the struggle and what that represents in the time that it took place. So some of the same people who are talking are some of the same people celebrating Dr. Martin Luther King, but they're the same people that stand in real serious ways in the way of progress of African Americans, even though they understand what this history is, and that the structural institutional framework that is set up is militating against people of color, Black African Americans in this sense. So I get the point, and I have an ambivalence about it. But I also think that when you have a symbol, you just can't put something out there. You're in the game too. You're part of it too. So you have the ability to define, redefine what that is. So that may be an ongoing debate. It could be used as that tool. For instance, last point, when Jefferson Davis was standing in the rotunda, we went back and challenged that over and over again for them to remove that statue. And they had the ability or the leverage to keep it where it was for all of their, you know, not acceptable reasons, I would say. However, when he was still there as a symbol for something that I didn't embrace and cherish, I just flipped it around. So every time the Black caucus would go into the rotunda to celebrate, we pointed to him as a symbol of the unfinished work of Kentucky and of this nation as it relates to African Americans. So we have power in any situation if we define it. I think Jecorey referenced education, etc. But at the end of the day, your point is well taken, because if there's not substantive change, if that's not, that's the real recognition and validation of what justice is, you know, in the United States of America. So, you know, I'm ambivalent, but I think you can still use it.
I think that we should have a Juneteenth movement. And a Juneteenth movement could incorporate multiple things, including a day. So a day could be a part of the Juneteenth movement, but if it's just a day and not a movement, then I think it would morph into mere symbolism. And I think that a Juneteenth movement should include 5 basic things. I think 5 things we have got to get right. Number 1, the question of who are we? For example, there are 42 million African Americans in this country, but all of the 42 million are not the descendants of the people whom we are celebrating on Juneteenth. Because of the Immigration Act of 1965, you had two important pieces of legislation in 65. You had the Voting Rights Act, but you also had the Immigration Act. And everyone understood that there was basically, it was a two-horse race. You had Anglos and you had Blacks, but we understood who Blacks were. Blacks were the descendants of enslaved Jim Crow, Jane Crow people. That is not the case today. So we have to define who we are. We're not people of color. We're not minorities. We're not diversity. It's not about diversity. It's about the fact that we descend from slaves. Our wealth has been plundered and we have never been repaired. So I think identity is a very important part of Juneteenth. Secondly, economic repair. A Juneteenth movement must include reparations. And to me, I think what is outlined by Sandy Darity in his book, From Here to Equality, and what he's been advocating, I think gives us a blueprint for reparations. And if a Juneteenth movement is not about reparations, then it's just a bunch of symbolism. 3, I think we should engage in radical deconfederation of every type of statute, deconfederation of everything in this country that celebrates these people who took up arms against the United States. These were criminals and enemies to the United States. They tried to destroy our republic, and they must be demonized for who they are, traitors and men and women guilty of crimes against humanity. So 1, identity; 2, economic empowerment in the form of reparations; 3, deconfederation; 4th, schools, education. The reason we are so ignorant about our pilgrimage as Blacks is because only 7%, even today, of the Black story is being taught. Just 7% of our story is being taught in public schools. So we've got to change the curriculum. One thing that was mandated in Germany after the World War II was not only did the Jews get reparations, but every year Germans have to study the Holocaust. And so I think that incorporating in the curriculum of JCPS, the true story of American history. Back to one point about that deconfederation, I'm so proud of our governor, Andy Beshear, who took down the statue of Jefferson Davis that never should have been there. My recommendation is to put another Davis in there, and that'd be Georgia Davis Power. Take out one Davis, put in another Davis. She was a brilliant activistic legislator. Jefferson Davis was on the wrong side of the Civil War, and Georgia Davis was on the right side of civil rights. So put her in there. And then finally, we've got to defund the police. And so having a reparations movement so that we just don't have a reparations or a Juneteenth day, I think we should be celebrating Juneteenth 365 days a year. We don't just need a day. Every day should be a day in which Black people are celebrating themselves.
So Erica Denise, I would say there you have it. And Dr. Cosby, in the words of the famous mogul DJ Khaled, another one, another powerful point to ponder, because I think I agree 100% with the idea of having a Juneteenth movement. And as Doc laid it out with those 5 objectives, if we had that as a national rubric in different pockets of this nation, because all of us are going to do our own thing when it comes to commemorating Juneteenth, but if we follow that rubric, we would see impact, we would see sustainable impact across this nation. And I agree with that 100%. And also, I use that term movement as we were preparing for an event that we're doing tomorrow at Louisville Central Community Center called the Trustees of Inclusive Equity, or the IE Awards. I call it the IE Awards movement, because with that, we're looking to lift up impact leaders who are in the trenches in corporate America, in education, in healthcare, and in community settings that are challenging the status quo and looking to lift up our community when it comes to economic empowerment, closing those economic gaps, those wealth gaps. So, you know, having movements in different pockets of the nation that follow a set of strategic objectives is something that we should all get excited about, because if we can achieve that, then it would be more than a notion. We wouldn't need a holiday because we'd be making real impact.
Thank you, Mr. Fields. I want to come back to Dr. Cosby for a second, because I do know that you have to leave at 4:30, so I want to give you some more time to speak on this. But we're seeing now that we're calling for reparations to be given to descendants of slaves. And what does that look like? Is it, and I saw something, and please fact check me if I'm wrong, but I saw something where it stated that it would take trillions of dollars and each descendant of slaves would get $400,000 and it would be paid out monthly or something like that. I don't know how true that is, but can you talk about reparations and what that would look like?
Well, like I said, and I keep it right next to me all the time. Here's the book that we need. It's called From Here to Equality by William Darity. And let me just, first of all, define what reparations is, okay? And he says reparations are a program of acknowledgement, redress, and closure for a grievous injustice. And he uses the acronym ARC, A-R-C. First, reparations means acknowledgement. Acknowledge that a crime against humanity has taken place, which America has been unwilling to acknowledge. That is why HR 40 has never been allowed to come out of committee, because if you acknowledge it and study it, as Edward Baptist, the great historian who wrote the book, The Half Has Never Been Told, the fact of the matter is the half has never been told concerning the atrocities that have been committed against the descendants of slavery. Acknowledgement, repair. It will take trillions of dollars and generations to fix this. Yvette Cornell, who is one of the founders of the ADOS movement, says, and I think it's a brilliant statement, that it takes longer to heal a wound than it does to cut or inflict a wound. So if you cut your finger, that can be done in a moment, but healing the cut takes time. And Malcolm X would say, even acknowledging that a cut took place has been very difficult for America. He said that if you stab me in my back 9 inches and pull it out 6 inches, well, that's not progress. He said progress only happens when you pull the knife out and then you heal the wound. America's dilemma is America won't even acknowledge that a knife has been stuck in the back. I mean, you always want to wonder, when I live in West Louisville, how is it that you have all these blacks all throughout West Louisville? Did a tornado do it? 3, was it an earthquake that just pushed all the blacks in the poor neighborhoods? Did a cyclone pick up everyone like they did in the Wizard of Oz and just drop us west of 9th Street? Or was this socially engineered? This was socially engineered by the federal government. So reparations is acknowledgement, repair, and closure, but there can be no closure until there has been repair. So it's going to take trillions and trillions of dollars to repair the descendants of slavery.
Thank you, Dr. Cosby. Okay, we have a question from the audience. What is the ultimate way you guys feel Juneteenth should be remembered? And also, what can we do in a grassroots effort to make sure that this happens?
I'm gonna take a stab at it because no one stepped up. So maybe start the ball rolling just a little bit. I think it's really framed in what Dr. Cosby just said. Something operational and substantive has to come out of this and has to acknowledge and recognize that these deficits that are taking place, that there must be some real steps toward those achieving those goals and other goals related to that. So the question is, what does that symbol of Juneteenth represent? And I think that's what the discussion is. It can't be just a symbol. It has to tie into and relate to and actually be a symbol of that progress and acknowledgement of those things that have to be done to get from A to Z to repair the damage of the deficit that's been created. So I would look at it from that perspective. I think that educational component is very important. And I think also, even though we sit here and we have our own perspectives on this thing, I struggle all the time saying, I have my opinion about how to proceed. How do you get a lot of folks to accept that opinion or to discuss that opinion? It becomes part of what people feel is the way we should go or not. That always bothers me because I hear different things all the time. But that doesn't negate the fact that you have to tie that symbolism to real gains, and there has to be something that gets you from that A to Z. So I would want to see a remembrance or that symbol, if it's a national holiday or whatever, reflect that discussion, educate people to those facts that are necessary, and that will lead to how it's going to be remembered.
So, and I would add to what Senator Neal has said, and I want to just pose it kind of as a what if scenario, because one of the things I've learned from working closely with Senator Neal around public policy is that if we don't impact change at the policy level,
right,
then the sustainability of any effort, any noble cause is questionable. So the what if would be, for me, what if we could gravitate this issue such that it would manifest in the form of an amendment to the Constitution of the United States of America? Because we often hear political operatives refer to the Constitution as the basis for any real, meaningful, impactful decision. And many hide behind the Constitution in terms of not making change when change is really the right thing, or the feasible thing, or the likable idea that people are advancing. We say, well, that's not constitutional. So we were freed, I think it was the 14th Amendment, 13th and 14th Amendment of the Constitution, and even made reference to descendants of slaves here in the United States, but none of that has been impacted. So if we were to look at the letter of the Constitution, we very well could move back into a form of indentured slavery, because between the Constitution as well as some of the Supreme Court notices, the Dred Scott case, for example, they really don't recognize the fact that we are truly equal and empowered and are free compared to white folk in America. So I think it would be meaningful, sustainable as a symbol to have an amendment to the Constitution that speaks to the kind of Juneteenth commemoration that Dr. Cosby outlined. That should be cast in national policy. That would guarantee generations to come the kind of impact that we would hope to see in current day.
I'll just add that Juneteenth should really move away from what we've seen it in years past, which is solely for the purpose of entertainment. And as we keep talking about the identity piece, we should move towards the education, almost like edutainment, I would say, because the kids who are in our schools, they don't know why 60% of our jails are Black. They don't know why 45% of our Black kids live in poverty. They don't know why 50% of JCPS suspensions are Black kids and 58% of the expulsions are Black kids. They just think something's wrong with them. They don't realize, and they've never been taught, something's wrong with the system that did that to them. So it's important that as we think about Juneteenth as the day, the movement, and all year round, we give context to how we got to where we are today in the state of Black America. And we utilize that to push forward on all of these justice claims, from defunding the police to getting reparations and everything in between.
I'm sorry, but I have got to close out. I've enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much for inviting me, and God bless all of you. Appreciate you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Cosby.
Okay.
So Pat, I saw you were trying to get in there. Did you have something to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, because in years past, someone had asked about like grassroots organizations, what they could do. And most of, like, Jecorey said, most of the celebrations have just been, entertainment, another holiday that we get together. And so we've been working on a project for the last 5-6 months. I've been working with Jecorey and the Waterfront, just trying to broaden the scope of what Juneteenth is. Education is important, and I didn't learn it. My daughter didn't learn it. So I want to make sure that my grandkids learn it. I want that to be, so I'm a proud member of St. Stephen Church too. So I get to listen to Dr. Cosby all the time. That he just spoke, I had never heard before. So I was taking notes. So yeah, so I can put together something. But that is so important, that I think as Black people that we understand, and that we start moving more than just celebrating one day and no real sustainable change has taken place. So I just think that that's real important for us to grab hold of.
So that gets into a real critical question, because the question underlying all of this, once you framed it and you say conceptually, this is what we should achieve, how do we get there? And someone can actually lay that out and put a plan together, but then do we have the wherewithal to get there? I look at the community, at least from my perspective, and I would be interested in hearing what others would have to say, that basically our weakness, as I perceive it in our community, is our disorganization.
Amen.
We're disorganized. There's a lot of talent. I mean, very rich talent and good work. The people here that I'm looking at doing good work all over the place. You can multiply that by 100 or more in this community, and these people are giving their all. They dedicated. They're prepared. They're learning. They're open. They're striving. The whole thing, and we're still disorganized. You see, because the reason why that's so important from my perspective is that unless there is some standard that's recognized of here's where we're going, unless we have some modicum of agreement, not one voice, not somebody over here. I mean, there's a lot of good ideas, but unless we have a collective voice, and the reason why I raise it is because I hear good ideas all the time, but they don't go anywhere. People are shouting from the corner. How do we come together? How do we suppress our egos in order that the common good becomes the issue and doesn't become Gerald Neal's piece or Pat Mathison's piece? How do we do that? Because we're all human. So how do we purposefully do that and celebrate everybody's work and everybody's accomplishments and everybody's ability, and not take this holier than thou, I shouldn't say it that way, take this position that I have the right answer and nobody else has it? Because see, the answer lies with all of us. So what Dr. Cosby said right there is a great framework to operate from. So what does Kevin Fields and a Gerald Neal or somebody not affiliated with Simmons or St. Stephen's do in that situation? They are to understand what that is and throw out what you don't like, reshape what you do like, do what you're going to do. But the point is to look for that avenue. So I'm going to shut up a little bit, but I'm going to tell you, this organization allows others to come into your community and pick and choose who your leaders are. When people come from outside in the middle of disorganization, not because they're trying to be mean necessarily, they're trying to get their business done. And this is the way they do their business. They'll pull somebody to them, they'll push somebody away, and they're manipulated, because that's what happens in a society. But when you organize and you understand where you're going, and you set your standard and your relationships, notwithstanding, then those individuals, even if they're in power, like where I operate, even if they're in power, or the mayor's office, or anyone else, I'm talking about even well-intended people, they'll get a message that says, oh, this is where they want us to go, you see. So I'm just saying, I think that fundamental to the general discussion we have is spending a lot of attention on that. I'll give it up for me.
I think you're absolutely right. And what we're seeing right now within our community is nobody knows who the clear leader is. And it is a battle of ego. And so we're infighting. And I think that's exactly what they want us to do. They want us to be unorganized, because we would be such a powerful people if we could just come together with one common goal.
But let me jump in. Oh, I'm sorry, I cut you off. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's also evident in the amount of Juneteenth celebrations that are coming up on Juneteenth. I've seen at least 15 to 20 different events at different locations that are all happening on Friday and Saturday. But how powerful would it have been if we all put our resources together, came up with 1 or 2 events, and made it happen together? So now on Juneteenth, we're still going to be separated at all of these different events that are happening.
So let me add too, Erica, I hear the concern that you and Senator Neal articulate. And I think we making steps toward that unified effort that we need to have. I agree with that. We don't need to be disorganized. We need to be unified. But however, you know, I would say 2 things. One, if you look back even as recent as 5 years ago, you probably would not have seen multiple Juneteenth initiatives, because it was a very new, there was an awakening just happening. So we're being awakened to something that was probably prophesied that it would happen around this time in our history. So we're probably about where we need to be as we continue to move forward. You know, and I understand the idea of being organized, but there's also something to say about being multicultural, even within the Black community. We are multifaceted. We are multiple institutions. There are many missions afoot. All of them have a common good, kind of a noble objective. And so I agree with the idea of coming together, but I also want to celebrate the fact that we are, we can be greater together, but we're also doing well, you know, and we're doing better than the previous generation did in terms of institutional development, because opportunities that did not afford themselves are emerging. So I think it's time to really celebrate where we're at and then move to where we need to be, because we haven't lost a lot of ground. There's been many efforts, Senator Neal knows, and we've been a part of over the years, of rallying us as a Black community to come together and create a common agenda. There's been all kinds of studies along that line. And what happens in most of those cases is there's a binding element that we all suffer from, which is our major Achilles, and is economically based. We can come together and have all the great ideas and all the great talent around the table, but we still suffer because we still gotta eat, we still gotta operate, we still gotta run businesses, and that's where our Achilles is. So as we unify, we do need to understand that the economic justice agenda needs to be the sole focus, because I've been a champion of education for a long time and still am. And I support the development of young people to get your education first, but there has to be an economic objective in achieving educational advancement. And so I think when we rally around this issue of Juneteenth, we need to really be solely focused on where we lack, and that is economic power. And we gotta get past that. So everything that we're talking about helps us to get closer to that, which I celebrate. And I want to celebrate you for convening.
Let me stick a pin in that just for a second. There was absolutely nothing that Kevin just said that is antithetical to what I just said. We're saying the same thing. And I think it's important for us to recognize that. You see, this is not a but or either or here's how you do it kind of thing. What this is recognition of exactly what he's saying. We are already doing great things all over the community. I started with that. But I'm going to tell you something. There are things that individuals and small groups of people can do very well in their realm of responsibility, whatever. It could be economic, it could be in a field of art, it could be, you name it. But I'm gonna tell you, there are other things, particularly on the political level, because that's where the major policy is set, that you cannot achieve from your vantage point as a community unless you are organized. You cannot do it. Someone else is going to do it. So when you start talking about economics, the economic viability of our community, you start talking about resources. If you're talking about trying to uplift parts of the community that's not getting the benefits, all of those major policies, the major policies flow from where? They flow from political frameworks, from the national to the states to the local. And that is one of the things that you got to deal with. That takes organization. This organization will not get you there.
I'm going to throw out real quick to add to that point. As we discuss what's happening within our own community, we also have to acknowledge the communities outside of the Black world, I would say, that have had their knees on our neck way before George Floyd. I'm going to read just a quick excerpt from a study done by Root Cause Research Center that talks about how Louisville was a place of solace for so many former Confederates, and it created a sense of a new South. There's a statement in here from 1985 that you would almost think is from 2020. And the statement from George C. Wright, a historian, says, "These white leaders did not fear Blacks because they remembered Blacks as being loyal and passive slaves. They were convinced that once they made the rules of their new order known, the Blacks would do as commanded." And we are still experiencing that today. And that's why what Senator Neal just said about representation and organization is so important, because we're still looked at as passive and loyal, and we haven't made a lot of systematic changes over the course of our 2 centuries in this city specifically.
What do you think, Pat?
I totally agree. I mean, you said it. I mean, and because I'm an organizer, it's hard for me. I don't do my best work in this organization or unorganization. I don't. And I just think if, we are doing some great work, but I just can only imagine if we came together, how much more and how fast we could get some stuff done. But it has been a challenge to get us to, it's sort of like, and I understand that it's systemic. We have been conditioned that way. We got to make sure we get what we need for ours. But at some point, we have got to put what we as individuals want and our egos aside and all come together and work for the good of our Black people, period. No hidden agendas, just one common. And I'm ready to work, but it's just hard for me to work when stuff is not organized.
Pat, and
well, there's a reason for that.
I think that's a perfect segue, Pat, for us to talk about the event that we've partnered with you as the project manager, and Jecorey and Actors Theater have come together to put this docuseries around Juneteenth together, which is our contribution to the Juneteenth movement. So Jecorey, Pat, do you all want to talk about that?
Well, I'll start, but I'm gonna hand it over to Jecorey because Jecorey is the mastermind behind the direction of the docuseries. But we started in January working on this because Jecorey had a successful event last year, and we wanted to expand it to make it inclusive and get everybody out. Of course, then COVID-19 happened, so we had to transition from an in-person event to something because we refused to just not do anything for Juneteenth. So we decided to create a virtual video series that we could actually show to the world and make it a part of an educational piece. So we've had conversations with JCPS, Jecorey talked with the Social Studies Department. We've we're trying to get it as a part of the summer learning. We've talked to KET and PBS, and everybody has great interest in it. So it's going to be ready to roll out June the 19th. And as much as I wanted to have an in-person event, I just don't think it's very responsible with everything else that's going on right now. So I'm going to hand it over to Jecorey so he can tell you more about it. We are excited about it, and we want everybody else to get excited about it, because this is a chance for us to teach about our history.
Amen.
So last year for Juneteenth, the Waterfront Park asked me to help organize a commemoration of the Abraham Lincoln statue that Ed Hamilton created 10 years ago, last year around that time. And I said, of course. And then we started talking about the date, June 19th. And it slowly snowballed into what became known as the Juneteenth Jubilee. And we pulled it together with what resources we had. And it was a wonderful celebration and understanding of our history. But as soon as it was over, Councilwoman Keisha Dorsey asked me, how can we take this to the next level in terms of not just an event about history and education, but also an economic driver, which is a lot of what we have been discussing. And she wanted to bring forth this idea of a market of Black businesses and creating this regional opportunity for us to make some money, because we know we have been excluded from so many citywide events, from Derby and everything else. So that's when she introduced me to Miss Pat Mathison, that I kind of already knew through St. Stephen anyway. And we wanted to have this cumulative Juneteenth event. And of course, when COVID-19 hit, it turned into what it is now. So we are going to package that event into this video series, and it's going to live forever, not only online, but also on television, in classrooms. It's going to be an educational resource. It's going to be a historical resource. And we're going to showcase local art, local talent, like Erica Denise and so many others. So I'm really excited about it. It'll be out this Friday for June 19th.
Wow,
And
that sounds exciting.
Local businesses as well.
Yeah, that sounds exciting. I'm looking for that one.
Sounds really exciting.
Yeah, it was exciting. Actors Theater.
Corey, let us know.
Oh, I'm sorry, I cut
What
you
is
off.
your date? What is your date? I'm sorry, I didn't get that.
June 19th.
Friday. Okay.
The first episode, so it's a 7-episode series. So each episode is sort of like tells a different story, but the culmination will end with a celebration of Juneteenth. So each episode is different. We try to include as many people in our communities as possible, so that we could be, because we're diverse, even though we're all Black. So we wanted to make sure that we included as much as we could. We have focused, we do highlights on 4 businesses, I think 3 or 4 businesses each episode, just so that we can make sure, because we wanted to do a whole big Walnut Street marketplace and have all of the vendors out and everything. But I mean, we still found a way that we could actually give them some mentions, and we're going to encourage Black people to support Black business. We've got a lot of great Black business owners out there, and they don't necessarily get the support that they really deserve. So we want to make sure that we drive consumers to our Black-owned business owners.
So what's the platform that's on, Jecorey?
Waterfront Parks YouTube, and it'll also be on Wave 3 News for anyone who doesn't have access to the internet.
And the access will be on Friday about what time? When will that be posted?
So it will air on Wave between 12 and 1 as a part of Wave Country with Don G.
Oh, okay, great.
And then it will also air, and I think the time is still pending, what time it will live on. It will live on Actors Direct, Actors Theater Direct, and the Waterfront page as well. So it'll probably be in the evening on the YouTube and the Facebook platforms, but it will be at 12 noon, between 12 and 1 on Wave.
So we can just share this and share this and share this
and
to
keep
the
sharing.
universe. Okay.
Yes.
Yes, and I'm so
Okay.
grateful Actors Theater
I
was
like that.
get involved with this project. We're grateful for that opportunity, and I was honored to be able to write 3 minutes piece
Yes.
in this, and we were able to involve our actors to do the voiceovers for those, and so I'm excited to see how it turns out. So
Yeah.
I'm excited.
And what I really
Looking
love,
forward.
I was just going to say real quick, what I really love about this video series is not only do we dive into the idea of us building this country, we also built this country's culture. So every episode is starting with a Negro spiritual, but what so many people don't realize is that these Negro spirituals went on to become jazz, went on to become rock and roll, went on to become hip hop. So we outlined those genres throughout the series. And, you know, of course, all Black lineup. And it's just an incredible piece of history and art that I can't wait for everyone to experience.
Creativity. Come on. Love it. I'm looking for it. You got me excited. I'm going to look right into that one.
Yes.
You know, can I raise something? I don't want to.
Sure.
What we have not discussed, and it's right here, is the moment, and some people say it's got to be a movement, is we're seeing all of this, and this discussion's in the context of protests that's going on as we speak. That there, you know, I go down there every day to observe it. The young people that are out there, but you know, it's a little more mixed than young folks. There's some other folks out there that, you know, doing their thing. And then there are these events that are happening all over the city. It's every entity I can think about are increasing numbers that are asserting themselves with respect to this. So you talk about this Juneteenth piece in this period of, in this context of protests, is really a significant time of expression. You know, it underscores the continuing struggle to eliminate racial injustice in our society. So this becomes a real special moment in my mind when we start talking about Juneteenth with respect to that. I mean, think about it. In the reality of an enlightened governor who's one day says this thing shouldn't be here, called Jefferson Davis, and 7 days later it's gone. Think about how long the struggle has been and how protests and a right person at the right time with the right sentiments takes action. And all of this in the context, I would dare say again, is Juneteenth, this thing that some people call Freedom Day, right? So I'm gonna tell you, I've really enjoyed this discussion, but I can't get away from how proud I am of these young people who day after day. And just a last note. I drove up one day, well, yesterday, and there was this one white kid standing alone. And he had this one sign, remember Breonna Taylor. And that one kid was, I mean, you could look at his face. He wasn't trying to be mean. He wasn't trying to, you know, take the show. But you could see the determination and the commitment on that face. Then I looked around at these other people and their faces, and I saw the multiple racial interaction. And I'm gonna tell you, Kevin, child of the civil rights movement, heck, I got arrested 11 times in the civil rights movement. Got hit upside the head by more than one or two cops, you know, in that situation. Been stopped like, I'm not sure about you, Jecorey, but Kevin, I bet you got a story to tell about that. But yet, this environment that we're living in right now, to me, it gives me a modicum of hope that maybe something different is happening.
Yeah.
Around the country, it's around the world. So Juneteenth, in that context, I think takes on a special significance.
You're absolutely right, Senator Neal. And, you know, I've been saying the same thing too, that this time something about this movement feels different. Because it's the whole world that's protesting at the same time. And so I don't think that we've seen this before. So, and I think some real change is actually going to come from this. And I do commend the young people that are out there, because I tried to go out there and I saw, there was this flyer. It was like, come on, it's going to be a faith walk. We're going to walk from 28th and Broadway to 6th and Jefferson. And I'm like, yes, that's the one I'm going to do. I'm all for it. So I get out there. I start out strong. I'm like, yes, no justice, no peace. And I made it to 18th Street and had to call a ride. I said, I'm unable to make it to 6th Street. Somebody's going to have to call my mama to tell her to come and pick me up, because I could not make it.
And guess what? Hey, Erica, and they are still walking and walking back, and not missing the stroke.
I was unable. I said, I'm going to have to support this movement in another way.
That is so
It's
funny.
not going to be walking.
But the good thing is even in this time, my sentiment is don't allow the movement to miss this moment. There is a place for all of us in this.
Yeah.
And like you said, Erica, I can't walk, but Jecorey had a healing ceremony. I went and I did that. They had something at 28th and Broadway. I went and I did that. We all have a part, and I feel like we all have a responsibility. I can't do everything that the younger kids can, but if I can provide water or, just make sure that they're safe and at least try to create peacefulness, then that's what I'm willing to do. But we all have a responsibility in this, but we cannot allow the movement to miss this moment.
So do white folks have a role in Juneteenth, Jecorey?
It's funny you asked that because you actually participated in last year's program in the reading of the Emancipation Proclamation, and a conversation we had this year regarding how to go about the narrations and the readings and that historical context was around, should we include the white council members? Now, everybody was telling me, and Ms. Pat's been a part of all these conversations, there were white council members who gave money, so therefore they should be included. But I would challenge us to look beyond that transaction. I don't like doing things because they're transactional. I like doing them because they're transformational. And the more that we have conversations with Ms. Pat, with Councilwoman Keisha Dorsey, it became very apparent that it was important for Juneteenth to not feel like an isolated celebration or isolated acknowledgement. And as I think Dr. Cosby said it earlier, everyone needs to learn about this as they do in Germany, and they learn about the Holocaust. Our little white kids and our little Hispanic kids and Asian, everyone needs to learn about what this country did and what we need to do about it today to fix that and make sure it never happens again. So we do have white voices and faces as a part of the Juneteenth Jubilee, and it's for that sole purpose, because sometimes it's not about the message, it's about the messenger. And we have some of those messengers there with us, not only as allies, but I would say accomplices.
And some of those narrations are really hard for white people to speak.
Which leads us to one point, and Erica, cut me off when you need to. What leads us to a point is that silence, that deafening silence. I'm talking about people of goodwill who happen to be white, know that something's wrong, knows that there should be change, but yet they're silent. And it raises a question that if you're silent when you know this, do you become complicit?
Yeah.
And the question that, and I say it all the time, I don't see this as a black problem. I see this issue as a white problem. And as white folks began to reflect on this, and I'm gonna tell you, I've had some white folks come to me and say things that my mouth dropped because they were acknowledging. Dr. Cosby mentioned this thing about acknowledgement. I think that's key. They were acknowledging and reaching. Man, I haven't seen that in years. I thought that was something amazing in my lifetime. I'm just gonna tell you that. Mm-hmm. So I wonder where that's going. And I challenge my white brothers and sisters every time I see them. And I tell you, some of them are very hard-nosed. Some of them are very ignorant. And I don't mean ignorant in a nasty way, because we all have some areas of ignorance. But they're certainly ignorant by design or by happenstance to what we're talking about here. But some of them are saying, hey, enough is enough.
Absolutely.
And I think that's encouraging.
It's definitely encouraging. And I would encourage our white allies to not just post their solidarity statements, but put some action behind those as well.
For sure.
Yeah, we need action. And so we are coming to the close of this hour, but I do want to go around the room and have everybody tell us, what do you know for sure? And then Pat, we did not discuss this, but we're going to end with you. But I was wondering if you could just take us out of here with a song. So you be thinking about what you're going to sing. You stay ready, you ain't got to get ready. So we'll start with Senator Neal. What do you know for sure?
I know for sure that we will get there. I know for sure that we are a resilient people. We are a strong people, notwithstanding all that in fact, our history demonstrates how strong we are. And I think we are a educated people in a sense that if we gain more education about ourselves, about what we're due, and broaden our allies and reach out to each other so we organize in an effective way on an ongoing basis, not be so judgmental of each other, that we will get there. I'm hopeful. I just can't just tell you. It's like I've been reborn looking at that protest out there. We will get there, and we'll do it together.
Absolutely. Thank you. Kevin Fields, what do you know for sure?
Well, I think I will echo some of what I just heard Senator Neal say. What I know for sure is that we, as a people, as a race, Black people, African Americans, descendants of slaves, are the best of what God has created. And the only thing that's wrong with us is really nothing wrong with us except for what America has done to us. And it has been tough to survive it. So the bit of resilience that we've demonstrated and have overcome in pockets is just a testament to that. But you would have to ask the question, what if that experience of being indentured slaves had not happened, and what if we had been brought to America as freemen, and that we had the same opportunities that our white counterparts had, and it was a free economy that you can build wealth on your time, your talent, your energy, your efforts. And there's nothing that convinces me that we would not have been at the top of the economic pyramid had that been the opportunity. So we know that what was done was with the intention of keeping us suppressed, oppressed at the bottom of that economic paradigm. So I think what I know for sure is that we have overcome the effort to keep us in bondage, but we need to really realize what the gifts that God has given us and show the rest of the world what it means to be the best of God's creation. So I just think that we still have that opportunity, and I think we're blessed to have it.
Absolutely, thank you. Jecorey, what do you know for sure?
I know for sure that we will be forthright. We will have progress. We will come out on the other side of this okay, or more than okay. We got through the slavery pandemic. We got through the Jim Crow pandemic. We're getting through the coronavirus pandemic, and we will get through the racism pandemic as well.
Amen. Amen.
Yes, we will.
Well said.
And before we get to Pat's song, thank you all for tuning in. Please don't go anywhere because you are going to be blessed by Miss Pat Mathison's angelic voice. But if you have not already, please like the Actors Theater of Louisville Facebook page. Just click like. And if you feel so led to donate to these panels that we have every week, you can go to actorstheater.org and find our donate button and donate to that as well. Also make donations to Louisville Central Community Center. I'm sure they are still, and I'm going to say we because I'm still a part of the LCCC family. We're still accepting donations for that theater that we want to build right there off 13th and Muhammad Ali. A 350 seat state-of-the-art theater called the Grand Lyric is on the way, and we need donations for that effort. So please, if you feel so led to donate, do that. And
Amen.
so, I'm sorry, go ahead. Did you say something, Mr. Fields?
Just amen, Erica, and thank you. We're very proud of what you're doing at Actors, and thank you for tonight. And certainly, I would add that tomorrow evening, around 6 p.m., we are doing our virtual presentation of the Inclusive Equity Awards. So we want to invite the community to come back and celebrate those 6 champions of equity and inclusion with us. And then there's a message there that you will take away as well in terms of what the change agenda looks like going forward, at least in pockets here in Louisville, in corporations and boardrooms around the community. But again, I just want to close and say thank you.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Pat Mathison, what do you know for sure? And then send us off with a song.
What I know for sure is God is with us.
Yes.
God of our weary, God of our silence, thou who has brought us thus far on the way, thou who hast by thy might led us into the light, keep us forever in the path, we pray, lest our feet stray from the places, our God, where we met thee, lest our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget thee, shadowed beneath thy hand, may we forever stand. True to our God, true to our native land.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, yes, yes.
Amen, Pat.
Wow.
That's what I'm talking about.
Fantastic.
Pat, thank you so much. Thank you all so much for tuning in. We really appreciate you for being here. We will be back next week at 4 o'clock. Please tune in for that discussion. We're going to be talking to journalists and getting their perspective for being down on the front lines in the media. So see you all next week. Bye-bye.
God bless. God bless.